Yo, it's me again, and today we got Ada Wong me long time. That's right, the Resident Evil collab is here and it's live, and so with that, we'll go over Ada Wong's kit, how she compares in teams, and I'll give my review of the unit at the end, so let's go. Alright, skill time. So, skill 1, we have activates when entering full burst, affects all burst 3 allies who previously cast their burst skill. So this skill is either bugged or written in a very misleading way. So for example, let's say you start your battle and you burst with leader, crown, then Ada, and then in your second rotation you go leader, crown, Alice, for example. During that burst, Alice will have the buff, but Ada will no longer have the buff. That's because what the game means is not every burst skill that's previously cast, but the one that leads up to the current full burst. Due to this skill is actually a lot less impactful than the game would have you believe. So I just want you all to be aware of this, that it's not every single B3 that has previously cast their burst skill. It's only the one that leads to the active full burst. Okay, so with that said, first skill gives 60% attack of caster's attack to the ally that just cast their burst skill. Gives them true damage by 50% and recovers 10% of damage as HP, so slight healing. Now for skill 2, flash grenade activates during full burst, affects all enemies within attack range nearest to the crosshair every 2 seconds, and it deals 420% of final attack as true damage. So it seems like another true damage dealer, so it could be perhaps compatible with the recently released Absolute Trio, and we'll see that in the team section. Then activates during burst skill, affects self, flash grenade toss activation time decreases by 1 second for 10 seconds. Then moving on to the burst skill, affects self, gives herself 40% attack for 10 seconds, gives herself 42% true damage, and enters special modification, which makes her decrease her charge speed by 300% and gives her 1500 multiplier on the charge chart. So looking at this burst skill, she is going to be a nuker, kind of how Snow White is. So nothing too crazy here, so let's take a look at her team archetypes. Alright, so Ada has a few teams that she can be slotted in. First off, we have the true damage team archetype. So first off, we have Emma here, then Enwa, right? Ada with Ein here. You could also swap Ein, for example, out to run the Absolute Trio with Vesti. You could also swap in, for example, Laplace. There's not many true damage B3s as of right now. I'm pretty sure Jill will also be true damage based, so Jill could go here as well, but that's in a week, so for now we don't have that. So that's gonna be sort of the first archetype. Now for the second archetype, you have the Cindy team here, which is basically a full electric team. This is something we've been running for a while, so you could swap Ada here as opposed to Summer Anise. You could also put Summer Anise here, replacing Maiden. But there's a bunch of replacements you can do here, and you can get a little wonky with this team, but this is essentially the basis of it. And lastly, you have the charge speed team. So you have Alice and Maxwell, and then these two are kind of more flexible. So you have Leader and Marie. You can have Crown and, you know, a bunch of other units that you can slot in those two spots. But this is basically the foundation of it. So let's take a look how they performed. Okay, so now let's take a look at how they performed. So first off, we have the true damage team right here with Emma, Enwa, Vesti, Ada. So here, Ada is doing 645 million, Vesti is doing 542 million, 119% of Vesti's damage for the first team here. Now, when compared to Laplace here, the same team, Laplace is doing a little bit more. Right now, Ada is doing only 87% of Laplace's damage here. And when we compare her to Ein, she seems to be doing about the same damage. They're kind of equal here. Now, when moving on to this generalist team with Crown, Mermaid, and Helm, compared to Vesti and Laplace, you can see that still she is better than Vesti, doing 130%. You know, this kind of shows how Vesti got screwed in her own kit, but that's neither here nor there. Now, when we look at Laplace, Laplace is doing a lot more damage. Ada is doing about 75% of Laplace's damage, so not very good. Now, when we look at the electric team here with Cindy and Anise as the off-burst buffer, Ada is doing 544 million and Cindy is doing 1.38 billion damage. So what we will see is that Cindy is really just walking over these units. which is as expected, but we're just looking for the secondary DPS, so this is not really a issue. When you compare this team instead of Cindy with Ein, Ada and Ein are again doing about the same damage. Here 92%, so here Ada is doing less damage than Ein, and here Ada was doing a little bit more damage than Ein, so they're about equal. Now when we look at this team right here, this team does not include Ada. It's just comparison between Anise and Cindy as opposed to Ada and Cindy here. So here we have Anise doing 485 million damage, whereas here Ada is doing 464 million. So it seems like Ada is a little bit weaker than Anise in this team, and Cindy is doing roughly the same damage in both, with maybe slightly lower damage on average in this Ada team, right? This small of a difference, 6 million damage, can be accounted to RNG, so this is not anything conclusive, so it's basically the same, right? Now let's look at the charge team here with Alice and Maxwell, Ada, Little Mermaid, Crown. We have Ada doing 678 million damage here, while Alice is doing 805 million. So again, 84%. Now what you will notice between these two teams, I replaced Helm instead of Maxwell just to see, and as expected, the Helm team is doing more damage. However, the ratios are kept the same. That means that both Alice and Ada are about equally benefiting from both of these buffers. So while Helm is the better choice, both Maxwell and Helm are decent choices for both of these units. Now, as I was testing this, I noticed that the skill 1 was either bugged or worked differently than I was expecting it to, as I stated before. So I decided maybe she is meant as a off-burst buffer for a double DPS team, with Ada being an off-burst buffer. But this didn't really make sense to me because of that nuke multiplier, but still I went ahead and tested it. So here we have Crown, Little Mermaid, Ein, Laplace with Ada as the off-burst. So kind of a general team base with the Crown and Little Mermaid, and the two true damage dealing DPSs here doing 2.8 million damage. Now I replaced Ada with Helm in the second team, and that team did 3,057,000,000 damage, and roughly the same damage for the Naga here. So Ada is definitely not as good as these. So Ada is a downgrade to both Naga and Helm with Crown. Now I went ahead and then tested the Cindy Electric team, replacing Maiden for Ada, and the team with Maiden did 2.8 billion damage, while the Ada team did 2.6 billion damage. So again, a lot lower, about 200 million difference in both these teams. So Ada does not seem to be the best in slot, or even close to best in slot, off burst unit for any of these teams. And she also is not really that great as an on burst DPS in any of these teams. She's kind of a side grade to Ein and downgrade to Anise, Summer Anise. So she's not in a really good spot, and she's not competing for a off-burst position with Maiden either. So she's a little bit in a tough spot right now. But that said, moving on to investment. If you want to invest in her, you want to go for 10 on skill 1. Skill 2 can be left at 7, and for the burst skill, go from 7 to 10. And then for the overload lines, you want the classic elemental attack, and lastly ammo and charge speed. Now you'll want to have at least one ammo roll, especially when you have charge speed. Now if you get more charge speed, you might want more than one ammo roll, just so she doesn't have to reload during her burst and lose that DPS. So that's about it for the number section. Now let's move on to my final thoughts. So first off, it's important to remember that these collab units are very limited, so if you do not get them now, they'll be gone forever. But with that said, Ada is not that great. Perhaps she would have been a lot more impactful for the Electro roster if her skill 1 worked differently, but like I said, she is currently a side grade to Ein and a slight downgrade to Summer Anise. She does not replace Winter Maiden as an off-burst unit either, but she might be a decent pickup if you're missing those seasonal limited units such as Summer Anise and Maiden. So overall, I'm placing her in the middle of A rank. Not a terrible unit, but unremarkable. Will Jill be her saving grace next week? I doubt it, but I remain hopeful. So let me know what you think of Ada down in the comments. Let me know if you think Jill will make her better. But that is gonna do it for me. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.